This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blood Red podcast on Friday. This is an episode which is going to be a roller coaster of emotions. There's absolutely no doubt about that, because it is the very last one with James Pearce, our Liverpool correspondent, both home and away. It's the last time we'll be able to call him that. Today is his last day. We've already done in midweek the James Pearce This Is Your Life podcast with himself and Joe, which if you haven't listened to that yet, please do. It's a real tearjerker. Some fantastic stories from James on that one. This one with myself, Sean Bradbury, Theo, Squires and Caoimhe O'Neill as well. I think this one's a bit more like James's final game. You know, give him one last run out, sub him off with 5 to go, get a standing ovation for him, lap of honour at the end. Jamesy, well, we'll start with you. The only place to start. Is this all belatedly an admission that your position has become untenable, this leaving business?
I know, yeah. I've been thinking about it ever since that 6-1 defeat at Stoke. When I did it, yeah. I actually left that one out, didn't I, of the podcast we did in midweek. It was one of those ones afterwards. I thought, I should have given that a mention, the tweet to say, surely you've got to step down yourself after this. And then ended up getting into a ding-dong with this fella on Twitter saying, no, you're going to have to explain this to me, mate. Why is my position untenable? And he went on to say, well, you've got to take your share of responsibility for results. I was saying to him, sorry, you've still lost me. Like, I just work for the local newspaper. Like, what has it got to do with me? And he went, well, you've got to accept that if you'd asked better questions over the course of the season, results would have been better. So yeah, finally fallen on my sword. Some would say long overdue.
Caoimhe, on to you next. As regular listeners to the pod will know, work is well underway on the Divock Origi statue that's going up in your back garden. Will you be building any kind of monument to Jay?
Well, as I've already mentioned, the progress was halted because of a wasp nest, pesky wasps. Oh. But we've destroyed them now, like in the nicest possible way.
Humane.
We didn't when no rocket launchers or nothing like Ian Doyle suggested. He was just like, burn the shed down. I was like, yeah, but it's our shed where we keep things that you keep in your shed.
That's just the St Helens way of doing things.
Yeah, just burn it down. Anyway, so yeah, there'll be something, maybe just like a little Ronaldo-esque bust of James's head. But like the first time when it went really wrong, it could be like that.
Maybe you could do like a holy trinity: James, Origi, and Michael Edwards.
That's the three. That's the big three.
Yeah.
And there you heard the voice of Theo Squires. Theo, how are you feeling? The man who sits next to you has cleared his desk and packed it up.
I think I've probably had an impact here. I've only been sat next to him for a couple of months, and he's decided he's calling it a day. How long has he been sitting next to Gorsty, and he's been completely content with his position?
Well, this is it. Another man whose position could be untenable here, Theo, after all this. Right, well, clearly the biggest deal of the summer, James Pearce, has already happened. He's moving on from the Echo. But let's start with a bit of a transfer chat and things that have happened this week. Rodri from Atletico Madrid to Man City, they've broken their transfer record and brought him in. Start with you on this, Jay. What do you think this speaks much about the balance of power between City and Liverpool, and how things will go next season? Do you feel like the Reds have to respond to this? And how much will Liverpool's transfer policy be dictated by what City do in this window?
Do you know what? I don't think it'll be dictated at all by what City do. I think the way that Liverpool operate, they're very surgical in terms of, they're not going to sway away from their master plan. I think we've seen that in previous windows when there's been so many times, hasn't there, when there's been an absolute clamour to go and get someone. You think about the summer when Van Dijk, trying to get him, that went badly wrong, and I remember that that was a thing for the rest of the window. Then there has to be a plan B. You've got to go and get someone. He didn't. And he's done that quite a few times. You think the left back thing, and we ended up playing Milner there for a season before he signed Robertson. So no, I don't. There's no way that City doing a big deal like that will suddenly prompt any knee-jerk reactions. I think arguably, I know fans are obviously looking at it and say, well, hang on a minute, why are City doing that? Why are Liverpool not doing anything? But I actually think City have got a few bigger gaps to fill in their squad that Liverpool don't have to fill this summer. I was thinking about it today, actually, doing like my final column in terms of you look at the squad, and I think the only area I'd say Liverpool, I feel as if they're probably one big player short would be in the front line, just because I think I was looking at it and I think Salah played 52 games, I think Mane played 50, I think Firmino 48 or 49. They miss so little football, but which they're incredibly robust, and we all hope that continues. But is it really realistic? On the back of the three of them also been involved in international tournaments and having a shortened break, are they really going to be able to sustain that again. And then, if one of them, God forbid, is out for a month or 2 months, is the calibre of players coming in good enough? And I'd say probably not, arguably, at the moment, when you're looking at Origi, Shaqiri, and obviously Ryan Brewster, that they've got big hopes for, but be wrong to expect too much from him. So I think that's probably the one area of the squad where I think we'll see a couple of squad players brought in, but that would be the area that kind of, I'd say, is crying out for a bit more.
How do you see it, Theo? Because I think if you look at social media, which obviously isn't always the fullest, most accurate representation of the Reds fan base, there is a little bit of a rumbling. The Nets Ben boys, who James knows well. I think there's a little bit of disquiet about the lack of activity, and I can understand the argument. You fantastic season that Liverpool had, and the way it ended with European glory. You strengthened from a position of strength. Still a fair while to go in this window, but do you think the Reds would be missing a trick if they didn't build on what they have?
I think, like James has said, looking at the squad, it's fairly strong, isn't it? Like all the players, they're either at the peak or yet to hit the peak. And even where you look at the positions where they're a bit light, say left back, James Milner can fill in there. I think if Joe Gomez hadn't been injured for the second half of last season, maybe you'd be a bit more desperate to get someone in there. Matip stepped up, so you'd probably say, Gomez might need to fill in there. It would be more of a way for him to get that football. But Liverpool, this is probably the greatest squad that many of us have ever seen.
Yeah.
The only reason they haven't won the Premier League title is because of how good City were. But then you look at City's squad, Vincent Kompany's moved on. Fernandinho's 34. Sergio Aguero's on wrong side of 30. David Silva said he's leaving. This City squad won't go on forever. Whereas Liverpool, if they get things right, they could carry on like this for 3-4 years. So there isn't really that desire to go and strengthen the squad. Like you see all the reports, say like Ousmane Dembele, he's been linked. Liverpool have got the money. They're happy to back Klopp and let him get that big name signing. But he's looking at his squad and not really needing it. Why would you go and spend 100 million on a player like Dembele when you've got arguably the best front three in Europe?
Where do you stand on Caoimhe? I mean, does it still feel like this is a transfer window that could come alive? I mean, this week, you obviously already mentioned City getting involved and Spurs seems to be getting their act together. Do you think a fair bit more business could be done and that could have a domino effect?
Yeah, definitely. But what I will say is I feel like Liverpool fans are more content this time around, this transfer window. I think because largely they sort of know, Klopp's bought the bulk of his squad and there won't be many players coming in. So you sort of have to, become accepting of that. And then I haven't really seen many people. Rodri came in and I didn't really see, I'm close to the buzzard on the social media. I didn't see much of a, let off in terms of like Liverpool fans like crying about it. I didn't see much. So, I think that's a positive. If that would have happened last summer, maybe we'd be, more worried. But even though this summer last summer we was potentially going to be their title rivals, this summer we definitely are. So I wouldn't be too worried. But like James says, you do kind of think, if there is one position to fill, it sort of comes in that little, the back up to the front three. Can Divock Origi be that? We don't know. So maybe someone else just to be there to fill that void.
Yeah. If
it crops up over the course of the season. And of course, we've got that solid defence now, so it's the goals which we will want, and hopefully, bring in someone or depend on the statue man.
What's been funny from it all is the conspiracy theories that have come around. That apparently us as journalists are on a deal with the club to keep it all quiet because we don't want Liverpool to get outbid on some big name signing. Imagine if we had that much power.
I think though you have to be a fan for your heart is red, so you literally think like a fan and then you think like a journalist as well. But I just think it just feels different than any other window because of what the club have achieved, especially now, we've won the Champions League and we are champions of Europe. We can't keep saying that because we are. And I feel like the fans now, the fans I follow, maybe I'm not looking in the greatest pond of the fans for the Nets, Ben boys and whatnot, but I just feel like it just seems more positive. Like if we do a Tottenham like they did that where they just didn't bring anyone in, I don't think we could complain too much.
On that point then, Jamie, someone who undoubtedly is in a very big position of strength at Liverpool at present is Jurgen Klopp after perhaps his finest season in management so far, competing on the two biggest fronts, winning the Champions League, going so close, as we've already said, in the league, and bringing in loads of revenue through everything that the Reds achieved last season. How much of the apparent, the vibe we're getting is that it's going to be a low-spending summer, not many kind of new names in. How much of this do you think is his call? I mean, he surely, within reason, would get whatever he wants. He's in a great position. Do you think with the manager being satisfied by the way things are at the minute, that's a reflection of what we're seeing?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. He calls the shots now more than ever. I think he was powerful when he first came in, and obviously with the amazing progress that he's overseen, that say has only grown and grown. And he's got a very close relationship with Michael Edwards, the sporting director, close as well with Mike Gordon, who effectively runs Liverpool on a day-to-day basis for FSG. So no, there's certainly no kind of whispers or anything that Klopp isn't happy with the way the summer's gone. You can guarantee this was mapped out. I think a lot of people. I mean, he even went on the record saying it. I think I asked him about it in a breakout he did probably 3 or 4 weeks before the end of the season, and he said then that there's absolutely no need to go and spend on anywhere near the same scale as last year because the squad's so strong. He said, we're not going to do it just for the sake of it. And I think at the time people kind of read it and went, well, you would say that. Liverpool are still in the Champions League, still in the title race. You're not going to tell your current players that you're going to upgrade them. But I think he was being genuine. I think the issue Liverpool have got now is to try and improve what they've got. You're picking from a very small pool of players as well, because I know loads of names have been bandied around, haven't they, this summer? And one of the things I think probably infuriates reporters and fans is the agents around Europe use Liverpool's name just to try and get their client into newspapers, onto websites, create interest in them. The same old names, same old stories keep on coming up. But no, I mean, it's certainly not a case of the money not being there. The money is there. Liverpool have spent an absolute fortune in terms of renewing contracts for a lot of star players, that given them massive pay rises. So it's, I've seen some people say, well, hang on a minute, there's 200 million in TV money or whatever, as if that's just sitting in a corner at Melwood just waiting to be spent. It doesn't really work like that in terms of, the wage bill has absolutely gone through the roof in the last few years, because if you want to attract the best and then keep hold of them, you've got to be willing to pay top money, and Liverpool do that now. But Tom Werner, when I did the interview with him just before the Champions League final, he said then that, of course, he said, like, whenever Jurgen has suggested to us what he wanted, we'll do everything we can to make that happen. And I've certainly, I don't think Klopp said one frustrated word about the owners since he's come in. There was a source of friction there probably under Brendan Rodgers during his time there, because he felt that his judgment wasn't always backed on players, and probably trust was an issue, but that's certainly not the case any longer.
And staying with you then, Jay, we've bit of an update we had this week on Divock Origi's situation, where things stand at the minute with him. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I think there's been obviously a lot of talk about Origi on the back of what was an unbelievable second half of the season for him, culminating in the statue that's going up in Kiva's back garden. Liverpool, they're adamant that regardless of whether he signs this new contract in the next few weeks, he's staying put. Very positive talks with his representatives before he went off on holiday a couple of weeks ago. But I think there's been some talk in Spain this week about Real Betis being in for him. And of course, a lot of clubs will look at it and think, well, hang on a minute, he's inside the final year of his contract. Could they test Liverpool's resolve? Because kind of traditionally, clubs obviously have been really fearful, haven't they, of risking losing a player for nothing, which is what they could happen with Origi next summer. But Liverpool's stance is, well, they're pretty confident he will sign a new contract, and even if he doesn't, they think they're better off keeping him on board for this season. And then and he won't be able to speak to anyone else anyway till like January time. So they've got another 6 months to try and convince him to stay put. I mean, I saw someone message me yesterday and said, it's an outrageous approach for to risk losing someone who could be worth 15-20 million for nothing. But then Liverpool did the same with Sturridge last summer when they didn't, could have cashed in then but didn't. Emre Can the season before that. So I think it's more kind of looking out at the market and thinking, well, how much would it cost to go and replace an Origi, and who's actually available? And so no, I think the word out of Anfield this week was that Origi's going nowhere. Whether he signs that new deal or not.
I mean, them goals that he scored would be worth more to us anyway.
Yeah,
like Sturridge, the goals he scored against PSG, didn't he, and stuff. Without all them goals, you wouldn't, be in that position to win the Champions League and do what you did in the Premier League. So I think the club look at it in that way as well. You're we can sometimes look and I'll go, well, they could get 20 million. Why are they just going to let him go like Can did for free? But, over the course of a season, he can come in.
You got to replace him as well. I mean, that's the thing, and it's easier said than done to go in because you just hope with Origi, he's always been. At times, he is absolutely infuriating to watch because you think he's got everything you'd want in a centre forward, yet he doesn't. He does seem to struggle with a lack of belief at times, but he's still in. I think was he 24? I think he's going on 24. He's still relatively young in football terms. It feels like he's been around forever just because he had that great World Cup, didn't he, when he was still a teenager. But you'd like to think, God, if you can't take confidence from what happened to him in the last few weeks of the season, then I don't know what you take confidence from. And hopefully we see the best of him next season, especially with Firmino. Might not be absolutely bang on for the start of the season with the fact that his spell with Brazil at the Copa America is going right down to the wire this weekend.
I'd say it's also very encouraging how Liverpool then are acting because it's all very long term, isn't it? Like we think of Emre Can. Well, Liverpool could afford to let him run down his deal because they knew they already had that replacement coming in, Naby Keita, that had already been agreed. This year and last year with Sturridge, we've got Ryan Brewster coming through. So obviously there, Brewster is the long-term replacement for Sturridge. And this year they've got both of them there. So even if Origi doesn't sign, they're going to know how good Brewster is at the end of this year, how quickly he can settle to Premier League football, to whether they then need to go and get a bigger name to be ahead of him in the pecking order or another young forward to complement him who's a bit more of a winger. And then you've also got Marco Grujic, obviously, he's gone out on loan. That's probably their long-term thinking with James Milner. So they're not thinking, we want to win the Premier League title this season. That's part of it. It's thinking next 2-3 seasons, what position they're going to be in long-term.
That's so encouraging, isn't it, to be in that position?
Yeah.
To be thinking forward.
Absolutely. Last point, I'll stay with you on this one, Kiva. Last point on Origi, and I don't want to burst any kind of optimism or stall the progress of the statue, but do you think there's a sense in which what he did last season could be unrepeatable, given, it was every time he came on, every time we saw him, every little cameo, he seemed to score or do something. There was always the succession of marvellous moments. Do you think he will be able to hit those heights again?
I've got a fear in me, and I'm building a statue and whatnot, but I have got a fear that maybe he isn't actually that good. There's something that just deep down's telling me, like, maybe it was a fluke, I don't know. But then at the same time, he's shown me all great things. He's shown us all great things. So, I feel like we should have that belief that he can go and build on what he's done here. Even if he just doubles his goal tally, that would be incredible, and build from there, and then even if he is to sign off, or if he's to sign off now, then I feel like we'd be okay with it because he will always be remembered going forward as a Liverpool legend. You don't score them important goals and not ever get forgotten. He would have been an icon anyway, just for what he'd done in the derby, but he went on to, do that again against Barcelona, Newcastle goal, and obviously the Champions League final. So, he'll always be adored by the Anfield faithful. So, and me. But as much as I do say that, there is that worry, and I feel like everyone has it. It's like that niggling little, is he good enough? But, what better way for him to go and prove himself this season, whether it be here or, wherever else.
Certainly, the opportunity does seem to be there. Right, we'll move on from Divock to Dejan. Jay, what do you understand the situation is with Lovren? There was another update on him yesterday.
Yeah, again, he's been the subject of a lot of speculation this summer. AC Milan in particular. I think there was some reports in Italy earlier on this week that his agent had been over there for some discussions with them. And
I had a nice coffee with him.
Did you? Yeah. Nice fella.
Yeah, he seemed all right. Had a nice little tour of the San Siro. Then I went to Turin, asked
on your tour of Italy.
Yeah, I went on a tour of Italy. Asked Emre Can where his Champions League medal was, if I could have a look at it. Awkward silence there.
Cruel. But yeah, Lovren. I think Liverpool's stance is that he certainly hasn't indicated to them that he's looking to move on, and B, that Klopp's certainly not looking to lose him. So I'd be surprised if he went anywhere. I think there was some talk on there a few weeks ago that 25 million or whatever, and probably I think if Liverpool did get a bid in around that would be then a difficult decision to make, because I think for a player, I think he's just turned 30 this week, hasn't he, Lovren? And for a player that hasn't got a particularly great fitness record, I think he only started about a dozen games in all competitions last season. You'd have to say that would be decent business. But then again, a little bit like the Origi thing, then you've got to weigh up, how do you then go and replace him? Because he's we're talking about what is he, third or fourth choice centre half who has played in the World Cup final, played in the Champions League final. It's difficult to go and get someone with that kind of experience. So again, I think unless he comes back for pre-season and really agitates for a move, and the money is good enough, which I don't really see AC Milan sticking 25 million on the table, and he's also quite a high wage earner as well. I think the indications are that Klopp is planning for the new season with Lovren still on board.
What's your take on this one, Theo? Because the one incoming so far we've seen is the youngster Sepp van den Berg, and indications are that he's not going to go straight to the first team. Not saying he's going to be alongside Van Dijk against Norwich, but he's going to be in the first team setup and regarded in the same way Gomez was when he arrived. Does might that change the picture? And could you see that change in Lovren's thinking perhaps?
Not now, maybe at the end of the season, because it's another one where you've got that young player who's come in and it's that bedding in process, isn't it? And so then you can look at it in a year and say, how good is Lovren really now? Maybe it is time to move on if he's had another injury-plagued season, or if, say, he's fourth in the pecking order. But then you're looking at Lovren's situation and he knows he's part of something special. He's going to get games. He would have probably finished the season as first choice if it hadn't been for those injuries. And while he's never had that consistent run without injuries, last year was by far the worst. And it just coincided with him off the back of his best run in the team to be a time where Van Dijk was first nailed on choice in that defence. And Liverpool had never had that before, under Klopp especially. So it's like Origi, isn't it? If he wants to move on, he can go with everyone's blessing. But I don't think it's the right time for him now to call it quits at Anfield. Yes, there's going to be interest, but I see Milan really going to spend that money. They've just been kicked out of the Europa League because they've breached financial fair play. Is it really wise for them to spend that much money on a player who's now 30 when you're not going to get any resale value there?
Caoimhe, if you include in Lovren, if we do include, obviously Theo's right about the youngster, the new signing, but if we do include Van den Berg, Gomez, obviously Matip, Virgil van Dijk, 5 centre-backs who maybe would all think they're at least in with a shout of getting games, or others established first teamers. Do you think, given all the competitions Liverpool are going to be in this season and the early start to the season, do they need 5? Should we, even if there is a bit of interest in Lovren, should they be pushing to keep him?
Yeah, I think so, because remember last season when obviously Gomez and Lovren went out at the same time, and it was like that moment of, oh my God, we don't have any defenders, because everyone had ruled Joel Matip out as a centre-back. They just he wasn't on the list, he wasn't coming in, it was one of them. But then obviously he showed he's a superhero. And now
sounds like another statue's coming.
I don't know, just wait. Me mum will go mad. The garden's not very big. And with these bloody wasps, Anyway, so I feel like we just, it's better to have a bigger squad than a little one. If we lost him, then we're, if Matip gets injured, and then we've only got, say, Gomez. The Sepp just seems maybe a bit too young this season to really feature. You don't know how things go, and, obviously be training with the first team and stuff. But I'd just like that security there, and what Lovren brings in that, you do forget that, what an experienced veteran player he is, and he's still only 29. Centre-halves go on to play well into the 30s, so, I would like that security of him just staying, just so we know that if a couple of injuries happen, it's going to be another 50-plus game season. So we need as many on board as possible, and, Lovren is definitely someone we should be thinking of staying around, and if not, I feel like we would need to maybe bring in someone else, because I just don't feel like that's enough. I want all the players. Bring them all.
It's one looking at the defence options as well. Before, Matip was quite injury prone too. He was out around Christmas time, wasn't he, when he did his collarbone?
Yeah.
Nat Phillips missed quite a spell through injury when pre-season he looked like he was only a few weeks away from making his debut. Joe Gomez has obviously had quite a few big injuries, so you've had to have Fabinho there at some point over the season. So Liverpool have got the options, but apart from Van Dijk, who is superhuman, none of them have been able to put that consistent spell together. So maybe Van den Berg will get his chance.
It feels like a yo-yo of that one's injured, now that one's in, and it feels like that's what we used to as Liverpool fans. To have that replacement already there would be a good thing.
Well, the past 18 months, all 3 have been the first choice centre-back partner alongside Van Dijk. That says it all.
Right then, well, but before we sign off, Jay, your last pod and your last campaign ended in European glory with the Reds this season. So just wanted your early take on what you foresee next season for this Liverpool team.
It's going to be exciting, isn't it? I think that's the that was the big thing to take away from what happened in Madrid. I think the fact that it feels like the start of something. I think there's been times when Liverpool have been involved in major finals and title challenges, when you think back to like probably 2013, 14, where you kind of knew that was like a one-off shot at glory that never to be repeated. But the great thing about this is, you look at, as we said earlier on, you look at the age range of that team, and you're probably the only player who you'd say is past his peak would be James Milner. Yet, he's almost superhuman in the way that he's such a clean living model professional that he doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing down. And so you just see this Liverpool team getting better and better regardless of what happens in the rest of this transfer window. I think without a doubt it'll be a 2-horse race for the title again. I think there's just too much of a gulf between Liverpool and City and everyone else for the others to even think about making it up in this coming season. And then, mouth-watering to think what Liverpool could do in Europe once again. So, that was, it felt so big what happened in Madrid, just because you speak to people, especially like someone like Milner, who has kind of been there and done it. He was one of the few that had won big trophies before. He always said, that first one is the hardest to win because it's just getting over that line. And then, when you've got that experience and you've savoured it, the memories of the parade, everything about that was attached to that then inspires you to just go on and on and on and get more and more. And certainly whoever steps into my shoes is going to be in for some ride.
I want you to put your neck on the line here. How many of the 7 trophies are they winning?
Oh.
Wow, you don't have to say which 7.
All right. I'd probably go, well, do you know what? The Community Shield I'm not remotely bothered about, just because I think Klopp will almost treat that. He will treat it like a, I know obviously because it's City.
An intense friendly.
Yeah, but Liverpool aren't going to be anywhere near, the level that you'd want them to be at for that one. Super Cup, I think they'll win. And then, obviously I'd settle for the Super Cup and the Premier League. I think the awkward thing for him would be for Klopp is how he treats the Club World Cup, because that isn't great coming when it does. It's such a busy part of the domestic season. So
they have to play the 2 games as well because there's a 3rd, 4th place playoff.
Yeah, and and people say it's only 2 games, but it's still, when you factor in the travel and the difference in the conditions and all the rest of it, it's certainly not ideal. And I know Liverpool have never won it, so he's trying to balance that. Of course, he'd love to be the first Liverpool manager to do it, but at what cost does that come if then you come back and you're kind of not performing at the top level? Because we all know that the margin for error is so ridiculously small, and I think it'll be like that again this time around.
I really wanted to win that for like years, watching all the clubs wear the gold crest on the jerseys, and I've literally been like, we need to, and now we're gonna be in it. I'm like, let's not be in it. We don't need that in the middle of the season. Don't want it anymore.
Well, I want to win it because it's going to change in 2 years. You don't know when you're going to get that opportunity again.
True. Well, you want that one, Caoimhe, but and I'm sure we'll speak again about Liverpool's prospects ahead of the new campaign. But what's the mood in the Caoimhe camp at this point? Are you looking for all 7 as well?
Yeah, I'm winning. I don't think we're going to give the ball away ever again on the back of Madrid. Obviously, Community Shield, like James said, I'm not really bothered. I think it'd be nice to just sort of get that little one over on Man City. Start the season as we mean to go on. But again, it'll just be a nice day out at Wembley for the fans, and hopefully in the sunshine. And then the Super Cup I definitely want, because I feel like that's the sort of underrated trophy of all. It's the one that when we won it last time, and just it felt like a real coming of age sort of thing. It was like the little dessert to the Champions League, and it's just a nice one to win. And then I'm not really bothered about anything else. This is the year where we win the Premier League, and 30 years ago, if someone would have said Liverpool won't win for 30 years, you'd be like, what the hell? That's never going to happen. And now we're in this position. We need to, eliminate that and just sort of just win it and end that drought, because it's been too long. The city needs it. The fans all around the world, let alone in Liverpool, need this. And, we showed as fans what we can do, that parade, all the videos from all around the world. This club is adored globally, And the Premier League, if we win that, it'll go off quite simply, won't it?
I hope the marketing team, the club, are listening to this. You'll be in one of those banners around town soon, aren't you?
I have
Billboards.
Kiever O'Neill, Birkenhead.
And Theo, yourself, get your take on it to finish off. It does feel like it's shaping up to be quite a settled summer. No transfer sagas, nothing kind of hanging over the club going into the new campaign. Do you get the feeling the Reds can just pick up where they left off and hit the ground running in August?
Yeah, I do. You look at the players away on international duty now. Alisson's just kept keeping clean sheets. Salah and Mane, they're just still scoring goals. If they're doing that through the summer, you'd imagine that the players who are reporting back for pre-season tomorrow are going to be desperate to hit the ground running, like the likes of Chamberlain, Brewster especially. And there's that competition there. And it's a place where players want to play their football. There's not going to be anyone who's dreading going back to work tonight, is there? It's one of those as well. You probably don't want it to be another month, 6 weeks to the start of the season. They'd happily play Norwich in 2-3 weeks. And then, this time next week, they'll have played the first friendly. They'll have a second at the weekend and they'll be going to the States. Football is pretty much back. It's crazy. And that squad is such a good squad. The unity is so strong. They'll be delighted to see each other again, to get really going again, because they know it was a missed opportunity not winning the Premier League last year. Put it right this year.
Absolutely. Right, we'll leave it there then. That has been the Blood Red podcast, and that has been 8.5 years of James Pearce as the Echo's full-time Liverpool reporter, both home and away. The man may be leaving, but the memes, they will never cease. Jay, can we also get a guarantee that we'll have you back on the pod as a very special guest?
I hope so, yeah. If you might have to let me in because they probably deactivate my pass after today. But if you'll have me, I'll be back.
You can do some with Doyley in Istanbul, Champions League final next year.
I'll take that. Right then, well, some good news from James Pearce there to sign off. He will be back. And if we all manage to get through his leaving due tonight in one piece, we will be back with another Blood Red on Monday.